how much time does it take to get the truck to heat? You need almost here minimum 150 or 180. The temperature outside is 33. It is freezing outside. 33 is warmer than a few minutes ago. Waiting for the water temperature. Every function in the engine depends on the temperature of the water. First, you need to make sure that you don't start with a frozen engine. If the coolant is not mixed right, 50-50, and you have water inside the radiator, the water is going to freeze to become ice. And the ice will block the circulation, the coolant, the circulation. And you can lose the engine if you don't make sure that the coolant is circulating from the radiator to the engine through the thermostat opening. Once I drove it was a Plymouth Volare in 1978. I was in Colorado Springs in winter. The first time I've been in winter in Colorado. And I started the engine, the car runs perfectly good. But I did not realize that I have water in the radiator. The entire cooling system, the upper and the lower hoses, were frozen solid like rock. So there was no cooling. And suddenly everything ruptured. I drove a few miles from home, maybe 2-3 miles, when the car engulfed in a cloud of fog, because the ice inside the cooling system around the engine, the jacket of ice around the engine and the hoses and the radiator does not melt easily, and it might never melt if you put water in the cooling system. The cooling system has to be some liquid that does not freeze at low temperature, depending on what kind of temperature. If you're driving at minus 50 Fahrenheit, minus 70 Fahrenheit, different from minus 10 or 20 Fahrenheit, different from 10 to 20 Fahrenheit. You have to have the right coolant that does not freeze at low temperature. If the cooling system froze, means your engine is frozen. Even though the engine in the combustion part will run, because the combustion part does not have water. It has only air and diesel, or air and gasoline. So you can run the engine, but the engine, if the engine is frozen after you run the engine, within a very short time, less than 15 minutes, your entire car will catch fire. The engine will melt down, because the cooling jacket of coolant around the engine and the upper and lower inlet and outlet of radiator of cooling fluid that's supposed to circulate through the radiator are frozen. A freezing engine can run, but it will catch fire quick and it will melt down because you have no cooling, even though it is surrounded by ice. Ice does not cool the engine. The engine can only be cooled by circulating water from at high pressure. Of course, you have to have high pressure. The pressure is depend on that. When you have a temperature of 180 Fahrenheit, like most cars, depend on the thermostat. 180 Fahrenheit, the thermostat will hold the pressure of the steam until the temperature goes to 180, then it will open the thermostat to allow the water to go through the radiator. When it goes through the radiator, it is cooled and it comes back to the engine. That's called a cooling cycle. If that cooling cycle doesn't take place, the engine will run, but it will catch fire and melt. Melt means you are not going to have an engine again, because once the engine overheats, even though it is surrounded by a jacket of ice, all the pistons will burn. The rings around the piston will burn, will be cooked. The extreme temperature will shut the engine cylinder, and when you open the engine, when you take the intake, the cover, what you call it, the cylinder head cover, you will see the cracks inside the engine. How do you do it? They don't remove the intake to do that. They don't remove the head cylinder to see the crack. They do a compression. They take one of the spark plugs and they put a pressure sensor, compression sensor, and they spin the flywheel. When you spin the flywheel, the crankshaft of the engine will spin as you spin it with your wrench. If there is no vacuum inside that cylinder that you are measuring pressure in it, that cylinder have to have vacuum and the 4 cycles. The burning cycle, the suction cycle, the exhaust cycle, the 4 cycles of combustion engine. In order for, you test that by compression gauge. So you cannot really move from here until that water thermometer rises to 180 or 150. I can move a little bit here, but it might run into problem. I can move a little bit to see why is it not going anywhere. Is it frozen? The oil pressure, the oil temperature. Where is the oil temperature? The oil this is the oil. Is it pressure or temperature? That's the pressure, oil pressure. But this is the Fahrenheit. This is a degree Fahrenheit water. This is the American car, American truck. Right here. You will have to have that valve going up. Let me turn it off and on to see why it is frozen. So it passed the test, but it did not. The temperature did not go up. The water temperature had to go up in order for us to drive a truck. This is, as you see the drawing here, this is the pressure on the drive. This is the pressure on the transmission. This is the water temperature. This is an RPM, the engine RPM multiplied by 100. And this is a gauge for the fuel, and this is for the fuel and the diff. And this is for the speedometer or the odometer and the oil pressure. And these two on the side are for the pressure, primary and secondary air pressures. I needed that to go up. I needed that to go up before I can start, before I can run. I can see the snow is melting, and if I put my hands on the air, get my hands here to see it. It's cold day. It did not cool. Well, how is it going? It is a little bit warm, not as cold as outside. But the temperature here, it seems like this temperature measures after the thermostat, not before the thermostat. There is no melting in the windshield. Let me direct the air to the windshield. There is no melting of snow on the windshield. That melting from the top comes from the sun or something else. But here the temperature is not going anywhere. It simply means either the truck was frozen for so long, was left alone for so long, was not driven for so long, or the cooling mix is not appropriate. This is a frozen engine. How long? I'm sitting here 24 minutes. 24 minutes and the engine is frozen. I am on duty for 24 minutes and the engine is frozen. Now it's 25 minutes and this thing is stuck. How do you know that you have a frozen engine? You look at the windshield, you turn the defrost on. Let us do that internal. Can you do it internal? Okay, don't need that. That automatically, it's already hot here. You cannot even do that internal. And we have it in the defrost. And there is no melting here. The snow is not melting on the windshield. That I cleaned that with I cleaned that window with the wiper, like that. But I don't see any melting at the bottom here, which means there is no hot air coming out from the vents, which means we are frozen. We are here frozen. You can say no, 100 temperature is not frozen, 100 Fahrenheit. It can be hot but not very hot. Yes, that's true, but we will never know until we get there. Do we have a digital thermometer? Let me see if we have a digital thermometer. This is where you get your electronic gauges from. This plus and minus, and this is, I think so. Let us see. Here it say fuel temperature 105. So we are heating with the fuel. But remember, the fuel is 105 means the engine is hot. It's getting hot. The boiling temperature is of water is 212. This is the engine is getting hot. But I need the water temperature. This is the water temperature right here. What is that, 64? Can that increase? And this is air, this is a manifold. This is 64 temperature. Yeah, it's going up. Okay, now we have a hint. We have a hint now. Here is a temperature where it say, I think that says circulation, 65, and here is the temperature under 100, which makes sense. So now we have something rational. Can this temperature rise gradually? Let us go back with that sensor again from here. Minus 106. So the fuel, the oil is increasing in temperature from 105 to 106, which means the engine is getting hot. But remember, the engine is not cooled. This is getting hot. This is the engine it's getting hot because that's inside the engine. You needed the water temperature. So let us press that again. That is the water temperature 65. It makes sense 65 because you seem to be measuring the temperature after, not before the thermostat. So once the temperature of the engine hit 150, 180, the thermostat is either 165 Fahrenheit adjustment or 180 Fahrenheit. So once you hit that mark, the threshold, the water temperature is getting a little up. Once you pass the threshold of the thermostat, the thermostat will open. The thermostat is simply a piece of metal and a coil, a spring around it that's sensitive to temperature. Once that piece of metal, I don't know if it's two pieces of metal or just a copper filled with some air, and once you adjust it, you get to the threshold temperature, the spring will be pushed, opening the valve for the water, for the steam to circulate to the radiator. So far we have no luck of getting the engine to get hot. Can I spin it? Can I rev the engine? Would that help us? Now the temperature is trying to get 65, 67. Here is 67. But here is because this is not very sensitive. Let's start from 100. Once this one goes over 100, that one should be moving. That one should be moving. And we are sitting here for 30 minutes. Remember, 30 minutes to cool the engine. Let us go through this cycle of this positive and negative to see what is the temperature outside now. That is the voltage of the battery. That is adaptive cruise distance setting 3.5. We don't need that work menu. That's the temperature outside is 33 degrees. And that N means, I think, N means neutral. It is 9:11 in the morning. 33 degrees. Remember, when you run an engine in a cold weather is very friendly to engines. Engines love cold weather because you have a differential of heat, of temperature from outside and inside. Outside means the sink or the weather, and inside means the engine or the source of heat. When you run in a cold weather, engines survive longer in winter than in summer. Summer cooks them. Even a human system, a human engine. Now the oil increases the temperature 110, it was 105. Even your own system, your mitochondria, generates what you call it the ATP, whether you're doing aerobic respiration or anaerobic respiration. Anaerobic means if you burn fat. Aerobic means if you burn glucose. Whenever you burn energy. You needed a cold weather to get rid of the heat. What you call it, heat disposal or heat removal from the body. When your body fails to remove the heat, you have fever. Fever means your body have failed to move the heat, which means you are sick. When you have fever, means your cells are sick. What you call it, cellular failure of respiration. Fever means your mitochondria is unable to remove the heat from the cell to the circulation, and you have internal damage and you die because of heat. Heat kills the internal organs. Here, our engine is hot. It's getting hot now, as you see, 112 now. How much is the water? I'm pressing this thing. How much is the water now? It increased from 69, 64, 69. So the water, and you can see now the gauge is going a little up. Right here. Right here. Getting very slow up. Let me make it simple again. The water in the truck is like the skin in the body. What you call it, a water jacket that surrounds the engine, truck or an automobile. It's really not really water. It's 50% water and 50% alcoholic material that does not freeze. Why can't they put salt in water? Because the salt destroys the metal. So they put alcohol, some kind of alcohol, not isopropyl alcohol, glycol, I think, alcohol, some kind of higher chain alcohol. Isopropyl has 2 carbons per molecule. The methane have 1 carbon. The propane has, I think, 3 carbons or 4 or 5. The butane have more carbons in the molecule. I forgot the biochemistry, organic chemistry. But the point here to understand, the water in the cooling system is a jacket around the engine, like your skin around your body. When you cool your skin, you are healthy, you are fresh, you think better. When you heat your skin, you can die from heat stroke. Not because you are losing water, because the heat is trapped in the mitochondria and the cells, and it destroys the ability of the respiratory system of the mitochondria. Mitochondria is an apparatus inside the cells of all living organisms, and that apparatus takes the glucose, the reduced glucose or the glucose that have little oxygen, and they exchange the oxygen for hydrogen or hydrogen for oxygen in the mitochondria, and releases heat to the atmosphere. What it makes your body is warmer. All living animals are warm. Even the cold-blooded animals are still not freezing. They are warmer than snow. The bears have to have very thick fur to be able to keep the heat in a very cold weather, but you cannot have frozen cells of bears. The marine life, they can survive in a very low temperature, but not in freezing weather. In freezing, they have to have fluid to be kicking around. If a fish is trapped in the ice, it will die. Now the temperature is going up. So when your body generates heat, why does your body generate heat? It's very simple. It's hydrogen and oxygen. The same hydrogen and oxygen that you use to kick or to expel a rocket from the ground to the space, you use hydrogen and oxygen mix, create explosion. Your body creates micro explosion, but it moderates the explosion by what you call it an oxidation chain, oxidative response. We are getting the needle of the temperature moving up right here. It is moving up. The temperature, the digital temperature is 74 of the water. The outside temperature is 34. The the oil temperature is 180. We can now move. We can now move safely, and I have a final look. The water is 74. I think I can move. We drove almost over 2 hours. We got the temperature of the water very close to 200. It's almost exactly where it's supposed to be, 180. That is the thermostat, because that is 150, 175, let's say 190. That is the thermostat temperature. That is the water temperature. If you look at the top here, 125, that seems to be the temperature around the engine, 126 degrees Fahrenheit. If you change the screen by pushing this button, change the screen, it will give you the temperature. That's the voltage. That is another screen, this screen right here. This is the ambient temperature. That is the temperature outside is 28 degrees Fahrenheit. So now we have 3 temperature readings. The water temperature, the ambient temperature, and we have before the engine water temperature. If you change the screen again, you are going to have the oil temperature. This is the oil temperature, 208 degrees. That is very close to the boiling of water. That is very good. At least you know now the engine is very hot. That is what kind of oil you need. You have to have oil that can stand this temperature. It is not very high temperature, but it is high enough to destroy any oil. Of course, the water cannot get that high unless otherwise it's going to boil. That is why when you change the screen, when you get to the water, I don't think you have water temperature here. Here you have the water temperature reading right here under 190 degrees. So now you have 4 readings: the water temperature that is in the radiator, and the water temperature in around the engine, and the oil temperature in under the cylinder, and the ambient temperature outside. For the measurement of temperature gives you an idea of how you are performing in your environment, how the water gets from the engine at 125, become 125, leaks to the radiator at 190 degrees, and the water gets heated from inside by the oil, that's 280 degrees. That give you a very decent idea how are you transferring heat from oil 206 degrees to water 190 degrees. That is the drop from 206 to 190, about 16 degrees, to radiator about 125 degrees. You dropped almost about 70 or 65 degrees by using the radiator, to the ambient temperature, which is 36 degrees. That gives you an idea, 39 degrees. Gives you an idea how the heat is transferred from the oil to the coolant, to the radiator, to the ambient outside environment.